Okay, so welcome. This is Historical Symbols and Modern Controversies. It is 7:05 p.m. I am, of course, Dr. Ken Mondschein, no SCA name. I'm doing this for Penzig University, but we may be joined by people from the HEMA world or people who just have an interest in medievalism and anti-racism. I would ask you guys to, if you would, just in the chat, please just introduce yourself to everybody, you know, who you are, where you're from. In classes like this, I like people to introduce themselves. And I'm intending this as very much a discussion class. So right now I have everyone muted for just in order to, you know, start the introductions. But I really want this to be a participation class because I really feel that in the project of anti-racism cannot be done by a cisgendered white male monologuing at other people. I think that's a very bad look. Instead, I'd really like to act as a facilitator for this, for a discussion and to talk about the SCA as a community and the also other modern medievalist organizations that we may be members of as members of communities and the problems with fascism in that. And I would like to begin by sharing with you guys two videos. So I'm going to go to my share screen and let's see a couple of videos. So let's see. Let's see. And if I click on this, hopefully this will work. Yeah, okay. Hopefully you can all see the movie. And I'm gonna hit play on that movie. This was taken at Penzig a couple of years ago.
It's not playing for me.
I also can't see the movie.
Okay, I'm sorry, let me restart this then. My apologies. So, okay. Zoom can be extremely frustrating sometimes. So what it was is that you saw the window, right? You didn't see the actual video? Let's try this again. Here we go. Because I clicked on the thing. Now can you see a video? Okay, let's try.
Yes.
So there will be some technical difficulties portrayed in the video as well. It's really nice, isn't it?
Card reader connected. How about that? I wonder if his forge is open. Oh, yeah, he's got the forge open. First try. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I'd appreciate it. You want to send a receipt to me?
I'm sorry?
You'll send me a receipt. You'll send me a receipt. Oops. You'll send me a receipt, right? So
Yeah.
I'm at Penzig, and this merchant was selling a swastika medallion. So I'm buying it, and I had it melted down by a blacksmith afterwards, I should say.
666
but I just wanted to show that this thing is there at Penzig. Some of you may have seen this before.
That's great. I like that.
Cool, thank you.
All right, there
Cool.
we go.
There you go.
I'll give you that.
Cool. So, anything inspires this in particular, or just?
I'm sorry?
Anything inspires this piece in particular, or?
It's... Take it for what it's worth. I mean, it's It's Mongolian, it's Chinese, it's a Roman luck symbol.
It's got other connotations.
It's got many connotations.
Thank you.
Most of them are good, some of them are not so good.
Cool. So we're here at Penzig War, and for sale in the merchant booth was this, which, as the gentleman explained, does have many connotations in many cultures. But I would argue that in a modern context in the 21st century, and you'll notice that I'm not wearing medieval garb, I'm wearing mundane clothes, that this is really unacceptable. It's going the other direction from the Nazis, the way the Nazis used it. But as Paul Stuyvesant calls a Schrodinger's medievalism, as something that this is, you know, this is the dead cat of the Schrodinger's medievalism. That if someone were inclined to be alt-right, and I don't want to name and shame the gentleman there because he seems, you know, a crotchety, sweet, rather crotchety old man with some rather bad case of the white innocence. But I am going to melt this down and destroy it. And I got this to document it. Thank you. So, all right, so I'm going to end that video. Okay, stop the screen sharing. So I will say that when I first found that in the merchant booth, I said, you know, why are you selling? He said, well, it also tends to piss off certain people. You know, and this was, mind you, right after the Kaid swastika incident, right, where the king and queen of Kaid had to step down because they had swastikas on their garb, and it was a big deal. And, you know, they made a defense, you know, that it was more about individual liberty than anything else, and historical recreation, etc. But this was, you know, this was obstinate, right? This was not really caring that this is a symbol of the genocide of 6 million of my people, but rather I should be able to wear that if I want to. We should be able to reclaim that. That has other meanings. Okay, so that's video number 1, right? And before I open this up to discussion, and I want to have some discussion on these videos, I want to show you a second video, which is related but very, very different. This is a coronation.
Seeing the hard work and the effort of its populace,
You'll see it?
seeing the traditions that we hold, has been truly a magical honor. The society has existed now for over 50 years. 50 years that we've shared a common dream. 50 years that we've come together despite our differences in religion, despite our differences in politics or political affiliation. We have found a way to find a foundation that we can all share. We have found a way to overcome many challenges. We leave this kingdom to address challenges that exist elsewhere. We don't leave this kingdom in our heart, but it is important that we do address that there are still problems here. As we've looked back over those 50 years of noble history that our society has had, the 40 years of noble history that our kingdom has had, it has been not without its hurdles. It has been not without its challenges. Those challenges have been ever present, and they will remain ever present as our society in the SCA and our outward society continue to evolve.
We have just celebrated 40 years of our wonderful kingdom, the place we call home. And we continue to grow. We have watched as our kingdom has birthed other kingdoms, and they have continued to grow. And it has truly been an honor to sit on these thrones and enjoy this last year with all of you.
Words have power. Words have power when they're spoken. And words have power when they're written. Words have power when they are typed. The way that we communicate with one another bears messages both on the surface and underneath it. Some of those messages we don't necessarily mean. Some of them we don't imply. It's always in the eye of the beholder how that message will be interpreted. It is important that we consider the way that we communicate with one another. Moving forward, as you have a new crown at your head, you still share the same passions. You still share the same dream. You still have so much more in common than you do that is different than those people that you may disagree with in person or online.
As I have donned this yellow belt once again, I remember, and I would encourage all of you to remember the service and love that you all share for this kingdom, that we are all following the same dream.
The society can't continue to live on without us remembering those things that we share, without treating one another with chivalry, courtesy, honor, and grace. From that very first party in a backyard in Berkeley, California, to the next 50 years in the society, we will always have a common foundation, and that foundation is the dream. If we put the dream before our differences, then the kingdom, no matter who is in charge, will always live strong.
Okay, I'm gonna stop this because that's enough. And let's unmute everybody. So a very different video, right? He was expressing or trying to express something rather beautiful, a message of inclusivity and diversity within a dream, within the idea of the SCA. But in so doing, he was putting on, who was that, Hospitaller? He was putting on Crusader garb that, you know, kind of, in many people's eyes, is a little reminiscent of genocide, no less than the swastika. So I wanna open it up to you all. Yeah, Katrina, exactly. Mixed messages, or I would say some rich irony, right? Some really, you know, speaking something anti-racist, while at the same time giving a little bit of a Schrodinger's medievalism there, right? A little, you know, kind of an interesting mix of good wishes and naivete that's harmful. So it opens up a bunch of things, right? In the two videos, right, we saw two men, right? There were two men. It was Templar. Thank you. There are two speakers, right? Clearly different intentions. One was sort of a willful ignorance, right? Are either of them doing harm? Are both of them doing harm? And what should we do about this? So let me open it up to you guys. So you're all, if you're muted now, it's because you are. All right, so Jennifer, go for it.
So what the fellow who was donning the Knights Templar garb verbally did, as he openly displayed this desire to wear, I don't think it matters where you're at, controversial garb, while speaking about unity, is something that, as someone who belongs to the Kingdom of Atlantia and participates in the world of the SCA online on Facebook, in particular, a lot of people who have, I guess, swan dived out of the SCA Association often pose their language in the exact same way, meaning that because we all share this desire to reenact the past, we should be able to look past all of these little things that seem to keep hanging us up, such things like arguments over swastikas, the appropriateness, Templar's garb, embedded racism and structural discrimination, and all of these things. And so as they do these things, the message that they're communicating is that if you call these things out, then you're acting in a way that is divisive rather than unifying, even though they themselves, of course, are acting in a very divisive manner while attempting to speak to the contrary. And so I think that at that point, they're making an argument that those of us who would like to see change are ourselves being illiberal, whereas they themselves are speaking in a way that's meant to unite everyone, but is in fact actually extremely divisive.
Interesting. Anyone have a comment, other reaction, or other take on it? Very well put. Again, I want to be sort of a facilitator. If you want to raise your hand, by the way, I can't really see everybody. Actually, I can see everybody on my screen by entering gallery view. Now I can see all of you. So yeah, so there's like a little hand raising thing, or you just put something in the chat. So yeah, please. If anyone else have a point or
Well, just some context. At the time, the entire Kingdom of Meridians was going through this Crusader garb period, where I would say a good 50% of the kingdom was participating, not necessarily all as Knight Templars, but just about every knight was doing some kind of Crusader garb for quite a long time. And it was really difficult to watch because there was no context given to anything that they did under this like Crusader reenactments umbrella.
so just simply they were just wearing a sort of a fashion statement, but there was no.
They were doing it as, you know, a reenactment of the Crusade, but they never gave historical context to what they were doing. Never presented anything other than the Christian side of the Crusade, and particularly the Roman Catholic side of the Crusade.
Yeah.
And that was all willful. And this is the same kingdom that for my entire career, I started in 1990, has been flying a banner that looks remarkably like the battle flag. And the history I was told about that was that in the first Inter-Kingdom War between the Middle Kingdom and Meridians, that the battle flag was actually there. And then this was then substituted in for that because it was inappropriate.
But they made their kingdom's coat of arms, yes, and the kingdom.
Yeah, they have now gotten rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's been there for a long time, and I know of multiple people of color that saw that and commented on it at their first event.
It does not make a welcome or opening environment, I think, to people of color, particularly African Americans, to see that. No, but no one here minds. Well, of course, it's because people take one look at that flag and they run off, right? Anyone else? Yeah, they are retiring the populist badge. Cool. Anyone else have a point? Things about the videos? Question, further question is, what can be done about it? Or what would you advocate doing about it? Sure, happen. Are you? Yeah, just unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, it's Rofin here. I'm from Osceola down here in Texas. And we've actually had a little bit of a swastika thing pop up in the last few weeks. We actually had someone who's the head of one of the largest households in the kingdom has a swastika tattoo on his arm. It's got a death's head and a couple other things on it. And most people didn't realize he had it on there because it was high enough up on his arm and it was usually hid by his garb, but apparently recently he's been letting it be uncovered more and more. And he claims it's in honor for his father, who apparently fought in World War II and apparently killed some Nazis in the war. But there's been a lot of understandable uproar about that, saying, well, why would you put a swastika on you to honor your Nazi-killing father? I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense to most people. And there's a lot of people in that household who have left just saying, I'm not going to be associated with that.
Well, it brings up a good point. What matters more, intentions or what the beholder sees? Because I know if I saw somebody with a swastika on their arm, I mean, I'm Jewish. I would not feel safe around that person, and I certainly would not want to associate with them. Jen has her hand up. So
Hi. So back when the great swastika trim of Kaid, was it Kaid?
Kaid.
Happened. And I actually was having a discussion with a friend who had spent some time while her entire family was, excuse me, was working in Korea with the Air Force. And so she saw that symbol very differently, as in, you know, it was on fabric and all sorts of other things, and, you know, in the masonry of all of the different temples. And so when she would see it, she would think of it in sort of the East Asian context. And so when the swastika trim controversy came up, she tried to argue that it's not always universally bad. And I have tried to argue that, you know, in the US, in the SCA, it is universally bad. And it ended up, she actually quit Facebook because of it. And it's not that I firmly believe that she is not a Nazi sympathizer, but I believe that I feel maybe that she was somewhat naive to not consider the circumstances and the location of where it was and how it was being used and things like that.
I mean, indeed, right? Because none of us really have that defense. We are not East Asian, right? We are not from South Asia. That in our culture, right? We need to bear in mind the culture that we are in, right? And that the SCA is essentially reenacting European history. That it really only has one context. And you can't say, well, these other people do it, because in our world, right? It's the worst sort of white innocence. Josh, Lacanian wants to speak, but I just want to read what Josh wrote in the group. Can Crusaders be reenacted in an inclusive manner? People have approached it both good and bad. That seems to be pretty. That's a whole other kind of push. Maybe I should let Lacanian weigh in, and then.
So when this period of Crusader revivalism was taking place in Meridies, I decided that I was going to try and give it some context. So I developed a persona. First of all, I chose a uniform that was specifically not Templar, not Hospitaller, not one of the well-known uniforms. I also used blue feather trim all over the uniform. So I completely believe in querying that as much as I can. I often would dress in combinations of the Crusader outfit and aspects of Arabic garb, because the character I had played had grown up in Jerusalem as opposed to being a transplant. I learned a couple of Arabic phrases so that I could speak as if I had grown up in the Middle East and was culturally more diverse than just a French-speaking Crusader. And then I spoke about me, you know, I played my persona and spoke about who I was in the crusade and how I felt about what was going on in the crusade. And constantly tried to give some historical context. So I wasn't just a person walking in Crusader garb with no historical relevance.
That's really inventive and kind of beautiful, right?
Yeah.
I want to know, like, what's the subtext of this Crusader garb in Meridies, this kingdom that, you know, is transposed onto the real world territory that is the South, right, which has its own kind of problematic history, right? And then this Crusader thing, right? It's Christian civilization. And then I really like sort of the creative take you took on that, where in sort of a non-culturally appropriated way, you represented the diversity that the Crusades brought, right? And the wider, because oftentimes I would say these things in popular culture become very historiographically flat, right? It's Christian culture versus Muslim culture, whereas in effect there were these blended societies. There was this accommodation. There was this multilingualism. There was a lot of cultural exchange that went on in a very, very valuable way all over these really interesting frontier territories, including, not just, of course, in the Holy Land, but Spain, right? If you want to look at the actual medieval history. What do people think about Josh's question? Is there a way to do Crusaders responsibly?
I think that if you wanted to host an entire event in which education about that particular time period was key, like that was the focus, then that would be something that would be useful. But I think on its own with no information regarding it, it's not going to work. All the wrong people are going to latch onto that and say, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely vindicated by my belief system and forcing my belief system on other people, other players in this game that we all engage in. And I think, yeah, unless you surrounded it with a ton of information, especially including, as you brought up, the diversity of the medieval world in Europe at the time. I think one of the hardest sells that I've run into in the SCA and out is convincing people that there were people of color in Europe at the time, and that are extant, that are period, and they just kind of lived, worked, and did their own thing. And the amount of disbelief and pushback I get from that is kind of alarming.
I mean,
but there.
Have they not heard of Tudor Times and Othello and Much to Do About Nothing? These are Shakespeare wrote black men into his plays.
He did, but he did it in a way that they were anomalous.
Okay.
Meaning they're sort of the example that proves the rule of there weren't really any black people, and here's why I can say that. Like, where are they in the art? Where are they in this? And it's like, well, they were, a lot of people when they're taking photos of these art, cut them out. And then you kind of get yourself into that whole conversation. But yeah, the sheer amount of disbelief about the lack of integrated society in the Middle Ages and that's something that I don't know if anybody else is familiar with. And not to bring up another academic, but The Devil's Historian. Devil Historians was a book that came out like last month before. And it talks specifically about the SCA, but it also discusses the fact that not a lot of people believe that there was a lot of cultural exchange and people moving all over the place in medieval Europe.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good work on that done recently, and there's Julio Mansky and Jonathan Size bibliography, which is on Google Documents and open source, is very, very good on that. And of course, we mustn't flatten this, right? And equate our, modern ideas of diversity with what happened in the Middle Ages, and the fact that, of course, they often conceive of race, for instance, in very different ways, often linguistic ways. We mustn't do that. But certainly, yes, there are people, but if we do want to look for representation in the modern sense, certainly, especially after the mid 15th century on, there were many people of color, people from Africa, or people descended from people from Africa, living in Europe, thanks to the Portuguese slave trade. It's difficult to point to Latino people before the colonization of the New World, but certainly Spain, and certainly ideas of race in Latin America itself, for a large part, depend from the long history of Christian, Muslim, and Jewish relations in the Iberian Peninsula. So this is stuff, that there's, rich history and rich bibliography there. And certainly these are things that very much need to be spoken about, not just by historians, because who the hell cares about historians? We're boring, and you only take our classes for Gen Ed credits because they're boring. But but by the SCA, frankly, I don't know about you, but I would much rather go to an SCA event than sit through one of my own history lectures. So which is another reason why I want to open up to you guys. South American names. Cool. Yeah. So of course we must talk. The FCA period also covers the colonization of South America. And, if anyone knows Ish from in the mid realm, he's a Jaguar warrior. Whether or not this is cultural appropriation is, or some form of blackface or I guess to invent a new derogatory term, red face, is a different story. But certainly there's a lot of people, and people in the SCA have very long been interested in diversity. I mean, when did the Great Dark Horde start? Right, in the 70s, Robert Asprin said, you know what we need around here? Some Mongolols. The fact that there are a bunch of white nerds is besides the point at the moment. But I think it's the thing that happened. So, not the horde all nerds. I'm saying, we're all nerds, aren't we? But so anyone else? So if no one else has other points about the videos, I thought the videos were a good way to start this off. I don't want to keep you guys for too long because I know everyone's dinner and stuff. But I do want to go over the handout, which is if anyone have any more before I do though. You have any more points about the videos? Any other points about any of the stuff we've been talking about? Or no? All right, I'm gonna share my other thing. Where'd it go? Here you are. All right, can y'all see this?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Did y'all have a chance to review it? Because I know I posted it in the Facebook group. Or if not, that's okay, because it gives you some stuff. It gives you some stuff to read. Historians boring? Yes, Josh, we are boring. Yeah, and we do find these groups, and sometimes they make us feel uncomfortable. So we did the videos, right? And I want to do the symbol ID exercise. I'm going to talk about these readings that I gave you. I didn't put my own recounting of the Kaid swastika incident in there in public bagels, then maybe I should have, but that's easily enough to be looked up. But I kind of want to do this symbol exercise. Let me just make this a little smaller so it fits on my screen, and you'll see, unlike the thing I gave you, I have got I've got some numbers there. So just take a moment to look these over. Tell me if you can identify any of them or what they are. And I'm going to do a little poll. And I'm going to ask you guys, which of these you find problematic? Can you still see it? The screen share?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Okay. Add a poll. Good. All right. Which of these? So I'm adding the poll. Which of these do you find problematic? Which of these? Good, nice typing, Ken. And then I'm just gonna put numbers. I'll just key them to numbers. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many of them are there? 7,
13.
8, 9. Lucky number 13. Add a question. Oh no, I messed that up. Huh. Thank you. I love you. All right. That's all I can. I can only do. Let me add one more question, I guess, is how I'll do it. And I'll do that.
So would that be, how many do we find objectionable without any further context? Just on their own?
Any further context, just being able to do it. Okay. Yeah. So I'm saving that poll, and there's 2 questions. You can add all of them. And then I'm going to launch the poll. There you go. Can you all see the poll? Yeah. So it's multiple choice. So you should be able to do that. And I had to continue on to a second question. Zoom is a very, very awkward thing, but every university seems to have done it. But you're all able to access it, right?
I don't think we use submit without answering the second question.
Yeah. Oh, you can, huh? Well, everyone just say 13 is. Yeah, I love you, Zoom. Sorry. Yeah, I mean Zoom. Yeah, I think you have to answer the second one. So I guess you have to find 11, 12, or 13 problematic. So, oh yeah, cool. It's submitting. Excellent. Cool. So if everyone could just hate 13, everyone just hate on the Templars for 13, I guess. Sorry about that. I love you, Zoom. You're free. Thank you, UMass Amherst, for giving me Zoom. This is how we're going to be teaching come the fall. Yeah. This is how we're going to be teaching come the fall. This is my life, okay? This will be my life. So. All right. I got half of you. I got 8 out of 16.
It's like good to get the practice in now.
Yeah, it's good to get the practice in now. Well, it's still going on YouTube, so I can look like an imbecile for the entire universe. But I'm doing the best I can here with what I got.
Yeah, the problem is I picked out the obvious ones that are problematic, but I know for most of these, in some form or another, whether people realize that are not have been problematic.
I'm asking you something that's binary about some ambiguous things, aren't I? Right? So.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's pretty there, right? But yeah, Catherine is, yeah. They all have been. All right.
Can I ask a potential spoiler?
Four people left.
I think 7 wasn't on the question either.
Oh, it's not. Oh,
It
no.
was repeated twice.
Oh, all right. So, thank you, Zoom. Yeah. So first 8 is 7. Okay. So, joy. First 8 is always 7. But again, this is just more of an exercise. No one's getting canceled for voting wrong. Okay. We will not be reporting you to the politically correct autocracy in order to cancel you and tell your boss. Seeing any of them as tattoos makes you suspicious. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have any of these as tattoos. All right, well, anyone still working on this, or should I end the call? Or I can start going over it, right? Because I got access to the results. But anyone still working on it? Y'all good? Yeah, 7 is Overwatch, so maybe. Yeah. All right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to send that privately.
Oh, it's okay. 7's the Overwatch. Yeah. No, actually, 7 is Half-Life.
Oh, not strong video game.
No, it's not actually. Let me end the poll, and then I will show you. I'll share the results with you. So I'm sharing the results. Can you all see?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what's one?
Belgian
Thor's hammer.
It's Thor's hammer.
Thor's hammer.
Mjolnir.
It's a Swedish find of Mjolnir.
Yeah, it's a Swedish Mjolnir.
Thank you.
Is this a problem? This isn't a problem for anybody? But
I haven't found it, but I know that people do use that in a bad way.
yeah, people do use that in a bad way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're Odinists.
Yeah, there's always, I mean, I know lots of heathens, right? I know lots of heathens. I've dated some. I'm pretty sure they were not anti-Semitic. At least the ones I dated, right? But they were, but a lot of people do use Mjolnir as a hate symbol, right? So it can be a bit ambiguous. So what's number 2?
A Celtic cross.
Celtic cross.
Celtic cross.
All right, who's Irish?
And that pisses me off so badly.
I'm not Catholic.
I'm not Catholic, right? But
I
live in
recovering
Massachusetts.
Catholic.
I live in Massachusetts, and you know, in Southie, you got a lot of Celtic cross tattoos. Are people who wear Celtic crosses, can that be problematic? Is that used as a white supremacist symbol?
I mean,
If I saw it on its own, I wouldn't assume, but when I see it with some other things, I start to worry pretty quickly.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so maybe not, right? Yeah. Mind you, right? We are as a group probably more skilled at reading medieval symbols than the population at large, aren't we? Like as a group, right? We're people who are interested in medievalism and cool symbols, and we all have cool bumper stickers and stuff like that, right? But my friend Kathleen recognized me. It was like, oh, that must be Ken's car. She saw my bumper stickers, and she calls me while I'm driving to work one day, like, I'm right behind you. It has to be you. That series of symbols can only be you. But right, that is the Celtic cross is something that can be ambiguous, right? It can be really, really ambiguous. Okay, number 3. A lot of you guys didn't like that. 50% had a problem with number 3. What's number 3?
Isn't that Hindu?
No.
I believe it's East Asian. It's a Manju symbol.
Yeah, there's I know a couple of cultures that use something that looks very much swastika-like that isn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's going the wrong way, right? I mean, we all know what number 6 is, right?
Well, it's not tipped.
Right, it's not tipped. But more than not being tipped, right? This is a way that this is represented in the culture that uses the swastika as a bowl of ramen noodles. I'm sorry, as a symbol for long life and health, right? And a good health symbol. This is something that we can recognize as problematic. But if I was like, you know, in church someplace, assuming we're ever allowed out of the country again, and I saw this in the temple, I wouldn't automatically assume that they wanted to commit genocide against them, right?
Right, I wouldn't assume that if I saw it in a temple over there that it was, you know, context. It needs the context.
Context is everything. Speaking of which, number 4 there, 50% of people do not like that. Anyone know what that is?
Is that a sun wheel?
It's a derivation of a Slavic symbol, but it's changed and altered specifically by a white supremacist group.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the black sun symbol. Shakira came out with some necklaces like that in her jewelry line, and had to pull them back really, really quick. Yeah, that it's based on a Slavic symbol, but it's altered and is unquestionably a white supremacist symbol. And of course, these things, right? They're doggo signs. The more obscure they are, the better, because white supremacists are not marching out in the streets like they did in Illinois in the 70s so they can get run over by the Blues Brothers. Rather, you know, they know their views are not popular, so they make things covert on purpose. What's number 5? One person didn't like it.
Viking seahorse.
Viking seahorse? Anyone else?
Is that one from Osseberg?
I think it's an Anglo-Saxon find, I know.
Okay.
Based on an Anglo-Saxon find. They're actually fairly common. They're technically a swastika. They're technically a form of swastika. Swastika is a name for a pinwheel. And that's a swastika shape. And in fact, one reason why I believe those 2 people in Caid wore the swastika trim is because someone called them the queen out previously for wearing that and saying that's a swastika, you can't wear that. But it's not very obvious as a swastika, is it?
No.
Yeah. It actually pointed out to me that that's a swastika. I just thought it was a cool horsey thing. But it functions very well as a dog whistle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, all right. Number 6 needs no introduction. That's the Nazi swastika, right? But what is number 8?
German Iron Cross.
Nope, the one before that.
Oh, it's the first number 8. I'm sorry, I don't know what that one is.
Anyone know what that is?
I think it's used by a white supremacist group based on the Greek, the Spartan symbol.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If this wasn't black and white, the gray would be yellow. will be yellow and black, so it's lambda. And that is European identitarian alt-right movement symbol.
Oh, yay.
I thought it was a Proud Boys thing.
And it's also a Proud Boys thing. They took it too. But that's identitarianism, right? That's right there. Conversely, what's number 11, which is also the letter lambda?
I'm pretty sure I've seen that in Half-Life.
Yeah. What else is that?
Honestly, that's all I got.
Anyone know? That's lambda is gay pride symbol. In fact, there's or I don't know if it's still in existence, the Lambda Legal Defense Fund litigated LGBTQ rights. They probably still do. So that's the lambda is a gay pride symbol. Iron Cross, number 8. We know what that is, right? Half the people had problems with that, right? Because really anything associated with Germany, well, you have a swastika, but the Iron Cross is problematic too, right? That can easily substitute for swastika. Number 9.
Do you want historical context or both?
Sure.
Because I know that is historically a version of the Celtic cross, but again, it's being co-opted by neo-Nazi groups and white supremacist groups, or at least that may be the version of it that's being co-opted.
Yeah, that specific form of the Celtic cross, that particular way of describing it, has definitely been co-opted as a white supremacist symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find all the problematic ones on the Big Red symbols site. But they also, they say, well, you want to be careful because not everybody who has this is necessarily a white supremacist. It's one way they hide in plain sight.
Okay. And the reason why I know that one is because I have the non-issuey form of that in my AOA, because my SEA persona is Irish. And the person who did the scroll, they're very small, discreet, and of course very discreet, but it's very similar to, it actually has the proper symbol that is relevant to my scroll and persona. So it's like, sorry, it's always tough to see that symbol, because it's like, what?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, what Kelly's pointing at, the Trisco there, this kind of like 3 waves kind of thing, has also been co-opted by white supremacists. You'd never think, right?
That one pisses me off that they've taken that one. I mean, they all do, but you know what I mean.
Try taking milk for crying out loud,
They're taking everything, yeah.
But we'll get into that in a bit, right? When we talk about number 12.
It's a rune. I just can't remember the name offhand.
Anyone know which rune that is?
Here.
That is
Tiwaz.
Yeah, Tiwaz. Or not. It's Tier or Tiwaz. I think it depends if you're older or younger. It doesn't matter. It's a TH. Or Thor sometimes. But this a problem?
It shouldn't be, but I know that some groups have started using that.
There's a lot of should-be's on this list, but are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ambiguity on this list, which I put on the list to show you just how difficult this all is, and how everything is in black and white. But the Norwegian ski team, they had this on their jumpers, on their sweaters, and they got rid of the jumpers and they used jumpers because they looked like they were white supremacists because they had a bunch of tier runes. And then, of course, this should be in red, 13, but the Templar cross, we've already gone into that. That's a very ambivalent symbol. So let's go to another symbol. Let's go to, this is Ford Whitaker's introduction. Well, it's about the cover to an academic journal called Post-Medieval. And again, if you go to the SCA Diversity and Inclusion site, I gave links to download this PDF. It's up on my website. I gave links to download it, so you can all download it and read it if you have not already had a pleasure. But that's Aaron Rusty Lloyd, there wearing some, I look at this picture, I think, oh, look, Rusty, and I think he's wearing some crummy ice Falcon armor. Great, and nice stuff. But of course, being me, the first thing I look at is the armor, and then I judge it because I am a nerd. But Cord teaches at Wellesley. Not talking about Rusty for a second, right? But Rusty's a member of the fraternity. I don't know if any of you know him, but he's a longtime SC member. But Cord looks at Rusty, right? He's can't tell. I'll increase the photo, but Rusty is African American, and goes by Aaron Pellamy. Pellamy is African American, not African American knight. Sorry, he's African, Moorish knight. It'd be hard to be African American from a round table. And Cord Whitaker is a professor of medieval English at Wellesley College outside of Boston. And Cord, similarly, right? This is to kind of use an academic mindset here. Rusty. And then he inscribes a bunch of values upon a member of the subculture who we belong to, right? Plus, Rusty is African American. This is a photo of an SCA member wearing armor with a sword. But Cord kind of rewrites this and says that, is this an evil knight because he is black? This is the kind of blackness that signals antagonism. So of course, that the value of black knight, as in the knight wearing black livery, and as an African American are the same, right? And then he goes on to ask what the European just homogeneous and white, right? And then talks about this and how disturbing this is. But I think that it's useful to read this and to look at this, even if this is kind of aggravating to you, because this is really an outsider, because Cord is not a member of the today, looking in at somebody who is perhaps, who's a member of his ethnic, but also inscribing values upon that person that the audience that Aaron Palamedes is not really the audience that Aaron Palamedes is trying to use for his presentation, right? Just like we dress up in our armor, right? We're not there just to disturb the image of time or whatever, right? I'm not trying to disturb people's idea of what a true person is. I'm there to joust. But Cord has his own, I want to say he has his own agenda in writing this. And his agenda is that Aaron Palamedes, right, that Rusty is a means of disturbing the way that we think about the Middle Ages, right? And that his intention doesn't matter in a very postmodern way. It's rather the meaning we, the readers, give to that. So, with this idea, right? And this idea is made manifest by Dorothy King's essay of 2017. A lot of these things were written in the aftermath of Charlottesville and the early years of the Trump presidency before we became, shall we say, inured to horror. But this idea of an epicenter, right? This idea that we live in a society that is fundamentally constructed on racism, that we don't notice that, we don't notice our own privilege as white people, just as a fish doesn't notice that it's swimming through the water because that's all it's ever known. That is a very, very, very common mindset in some areas of academia, and not all areas of academia, but certainly I think the most, the loudest and the most progressive areas of academia. they are, they're very, very loud about this. And together with this realization of knowing that we live in a white supremacist society, comes the necessity of fighting against that, of being actively anti-racist. Because if you simply say, "Oh, I don't see color," right, or "I am colorblind," or whatnot, then you are in fact complicit with it, right? So that's sort of critical race theory 101 in 20 seconds. It's actually a lot more complex than that. I'm really oversimplifying things to some degree. But I think it's important to understand that, to understand how the following the controversy around the pieces of paper I put in the handout, to talk about how academia reads us, right? Reads the SCA, reads what we do. Because I wrote a piece in defense of the SCA on medievalist.net. I haven't really been to a conference session on medievalism where there hasn't been someone critiquing the SCA as promoting a white supremacist agenda, a white supremacist agenda implicitly. And think about your thoughts for that, right? Think about that for a moment, whether the SCA is implicitly a white supremacist performance, right? Not, thinking about, Meridies and the battle flag and all of that, but thinking about everything. I'm going to briefly go over the arguments in these papers, these essays that I put in the handout, and then I'm hoping that we could discuss it, centering this around the question of, is the SCA, inherently in some way problematic? And then how do we disturb that? In other words, it's not just bad intentions, but as we saw with that symbol exercise, right, to bring it back to that symbol exercise, things that seem entirely innocent can be read in harmful ways. And because if, taking for a moment this presupposition that we live in a white supremacist society is true, how do we avoid doing harm? So this first one is Dorothy Kim's teaching white medieval studies in time of white supremacy. It's addressed to people like me who teach this professionally. But if you think about it, if we're being in the SCA, right, it's an educational organization, in a sense, we are teaching. One thing that the SCA does is teach. It's all we do. And so she says, by teaching medieval subjects, I'll cross out in the classroom, we are ideological arms dealers. Choose a side, she says. Doing nothing is choosing a side. Denial is choosing a side. Using the racist dog whistle, we must listen to both sides is choosing a side, etc. And she goes on for a bit about this, about the necessity to be actively anti-racist in medieval studies, and a great deal of older scholars disagree with this quite a bit, by the way. They say, well, no, we actually, the task of the historian is to rewrite what is to reconstruct the past in its own right? So I'm not going to say this is not a controversial idea, okay? Contra this, Paul Sturtevant, who runs Public Medievalist, he works at the Smithsonian, he's a doctorate in medieval history, talks about what he calls Schrodinger's medievalism, which are these ambiguous symbols. In this case, he kind of centers what he's talking about this hypo-negative Vinland flag. This is the Vinland flag. It should be green and black and whatever. Come up by typo negative, the band, and says that, and he puts in Man of War for no good reason. But he talks about how people keep bringing these things up. And he says, well, here, here's a Triskel, right? We talked about how the Triskel is a problematic symbol. Does this person with this rather nice tattoo, do they have the obligation to get this blacked out, to get it inked over because someone has used this symbol as a white supremacist symbol, or are they merely celebrating their Irish heritage? That's a, so this is a problem. Sarah Lamuto talks about this. Sarah Lamuto, I gave this because she says basically, Sarah Lamuto is sort of on the most definitely to the far left of this. She says if anything is ambiguous, then it cannot be allowed. Essentially, if you are making a person of color feel uncomfortable, then I actually asked her what she felt about Celtic cross tattoos. She said, yes, it's a problem, which she didn't have a good answer. But if making somebody of color feel uncomfortable, it is de facto white supremacist. And that's actually it for the essays I have there. So I've turned off screen share. So let me ask you, right? I'm gonna just, you're all unmuted, hopefully. Let's turn this back over to the discussion, right? Now that I've flapped my lips enough. And talk about this. Is reenacting the Middle Ages inherently problematic? Are Celtic crosses and things like that, are they inherently problematic? As one academic who sat in, I was in a conference session in Kalamazoo, and an academic said that we inscribe medieval kingdoms upon colonized land. Are more than just, the spectrum from not problematic to problematic to, or definitely problematic to, I should say probably not problematic. In some senses, this entire endeavor itself problematic. Let me ask you guys.
I think it's easy to forget to actively include people.
Mm-hmm.
I knew one particular person, a woman of color, involved in reenactment for several years before at one event she asked me, so what do you think about, people reenacting something that, an ethnicity that's not their own or whatever? And of course, my response was that, look, I absolutely have no problem if someone wants to be involved in reenactment and, they're concerned about, in this case, someone from East Asia reenacting ancient Greek. I have no particular problem with that. I consider I'll only judge them on their actions and their what they actually do, what they make, what they try and portray. Yeah. And what I hadn't realized was that even having known me for a year or two, she wasn't sure what I thought of her being there, because I hadn't made it clear that I was completely welcoming of her being there. So by not being open about being open, there was sort of this constant uncertainty that she was under about whether or not she was really welcome in our space.
How much of that do you think you're personally responsible for, and how much of it was, the group at large? Because, you were her friend, and she may have been there with you and had the most contact with you, but she, perhaps feel not welcome in the group at large in the context of a group celebrating European history.
It's a good question. In this case, I'm not a member of the same group as her, but we go to a lot of the same events because I guess the structure of the hobby where I am is fairly balkanized. We're in lots of small groups. So while I feel personally responsible for making sure people who are a member of my own group know they're welcome, I leave that alone in other people's groups. But I guess I feel like I should make sure that I'm being positive about that sort of communication. And I often don't, because I'm traveling and I don't want to offend anybody. If I've been at an event in Poland where I knew two people apart from myself, and I was there wearing a small hat, and the Austrian lady was telling me in Poland that trying to explain in English that I looked like a Jew, and I was like, well, yeah, that's funny, and hoping that she didn't notice when I wasn't eating pork at all the dinners. So you never know what's going to offend anyone, and when your own safety is an issue. I mean, I'm relying on my privilege as a cis-het white guy traveling around, but I know that that's still kind of fragile when you're really far from home. So I guess I've gotten used to not openly stating just how inclusive I would be, and then, you know, in the case of my friend, she didn't know where I stood, because I've gotten used to, while traveling, being a little bit quiet about things, because if I don't know who I'm actually visiting.
Anyone else have any other points about, I mean, what we can do to be more inclusive, to make people of color feel more welcome, to not give the impression that we're a place that would give a home to people who, you know, have interests in, you know, Knights Templar and problematic behavior, because we do need to recognize that we do tend to attract some of those people because of, you know, people are always perpetually interested in the past, particularly if they want to turn the clock back to a less diverse, more patriarchal time.
For me, I think we need to be vocal about it, because I'm in the a queer non-binary, and if I hadn't known in my local group people who are very adamantly strong allies, for sure I've never outed myself as non-binary. Most people know that I'm about as queer as a $3 bill, but like I've had what made me feel safe was and secure enough to out myself as non-binary is people, especially people who are of ranks in shifts, who have been very vocal and saying, I am an ally. If somebody is giving you a problem, come talk to me. And I outed myself originally outed myself to a good friend, and then he who again passed me on to some of the other shivs, and that's really started being for me feeling more comfortable outing myself more. So to me, especially people, I know we say, well, it's a game, and we don't really have that rank, but it's that perceived idea of rank, of the baron, the baroness, the king, queen, the shivs, the peerage, especially them, and everybody too, but especially people who have that perceived rank of saying, no, this is not acceptable, and policing our orders and saying, you know what, if you see somebody in the order acting like this, saying, you know what, no, that is not acceptable.
So what you're saying is that you're saying like a top-down approach,
yeah,
where the people who are really the role models need to set the pace.
Yeah, exactly, because like, it's one of those things. It's like we maybe it's a game, but the way our game is set up, we have that perception of rank and territorial baronials and peerages, and there's been a lot of discussions of people who have, especially new people who have had problematic encounters with somebody up in a peerage, as saying, I'm scared to go, I'm afraid, because this person is, well, they're a baron, or they're a knight, they're a lord. I can't say anything, and so we need to be able to be vocal about that, saying, yes, come to me, speak up.
So it's Jennifer, just calling a sec. I just want to say, One Jen said, I've seen some peers wearing pride medallions to use eligible in their rank. Yes, we definitely think so. The second thing I would say is that it's 8:15 right now by my time. So I do want to wrap this up within like 15 minutes or so. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say the SCA is continually talking about how internally we have a diversity problem. Like we're not a very diverse organization. But when it comes to holding events that we kind of hold with the intent of recruiting new members, of having new members join, it's always in predominantly white spaces.
Yes.
Like I've yet to see an event proposal for any kind of expo or anything else, or a demo, sorry, not expo, demo at an HBC. I mean, I haven't been in the, so let me give a disclaimer, I haven't been in the organization too terribly long, but I am very active. And from what I have seen where I'm at in North Carolina, I don't see people attempting to pitch events, at least, again, as far as I personally have seen, at HBCs, at predominantly Black spaces. And until that becomes more common or something that even happens in the first place, we'll continue to have the diversity problem. Because almost every single person I've interacted with, when we start talking about these things, the attitude seems to be, well, I don't see color. Like, well, that's not helpful. So that's kind of my comment on this with my personal experience living where I'm at.
That's an excellent point, and a really good one. I mean, events are always been like Lutheran churches, Methodist churches. Why not an AME church, right? I mean, why can't, especially because, a lot of space is church space, tends to be in the suburbs. Why is it in the suburbs? Why not someplace like, just to think about areas in my area. One of my fencing students attends a beautiful Methodist church in downtown Worcester, which in downtown Worcester, which is a much more diverse church than when in the burbs, because redlining is a thing, isn't it? So in real estate, in the real world. Josh made a point. Josh, do you want to say this? This is a really good point.
Yep. So basically, I actually visited a group in Massachusetts a few years ago, and as much as in the same way as when I'm traveling anywhere, I tend to listen and watch rather than saying much about a lot of things. But I didn't really know until after I left, and a few weeks after I left, I saw who they'd just kicked out of their group, which was the person who I was most worried about. So I know a lot of groups don't want to lose members. They don't want to kick people out. But when I see a group taking a stand and saying, no, this person's views, this person's behavior is not acceptable, I know where the rest of the group stands much better.
Besides your point about reaching out to people at the STEM Middle School Fair, which they did a demo, right? Good point, Josh. For my part, right, for talking about the HEMA group, and this is something the FCA can do too, but I have a team of professionals, and my website is strewn with pride flags, and there's actually specific fighters against and pride HEMA symbols that I have on my site, and that plus my reputation for doing stuff like this and writing what I write, we have thus far not had a problem with that. I think that they think we're looking for another way. But other HEMA groups and HEMA as a whole, in fact, just to show you something really quick, just to darn your socks a little bit. I don't know if it's actually like an expression, but it sounds old-timey and almost. I'll allow it. But I want to show you a couple of things. So this is the latest furor in terms of Chemoland. This guy's Facebook profile. See, he's got this kind of like area in the trees there. You guys can see that, right? And then can you see this? He was posting on Facebook. Can you see the cartoon? No? Okay. Well, let me stop sharing. I will reshare. Here we are. There you go. So one of our, Peter Swordfighter Blockfechten, the New World Order. There you go. This is his carrying that, right? I mean, I wish half the stuff they said about Jews was accurate, and that we're really behind all that to get money. If it was true, I would have so many nice horses and so much good armor. Because I know what I would spend my share of would be totally. I would have like the best horse trailer, and I would just academic. And we would just I would just be going around the country all the time, jousting. I think that's what I do. But unfortunately, that's not the real world. I should say, fortunately, it's not the real world. Yeah. Josh says he still has a pending friend request. I'm still friends with him, right? But I'm still friends with that guy because I stay friends with a lot of problematic people on Facebook. I bet like 3,000-4,000 friends for whatever reason. When you have a picture of yourself and the armor on the horse, everyone wants to friend you. But I stay friends with some problematic people so I can keep tabs on the BS that they're doing because it's research. And people are like, "You're still friends with this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's no research." Yeah, I should see friends, air quotes, right? Yes, this. Josh said that worries of people in photos, right? People can look at. There's a lot of this, right? There's a big fascist movement in South America, in Brazil too. I mean, this is not just an American thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Josh, it's in Australia. This is a huge thing. Jen brought up. The BOD doesn't the way people in R&D, both revocation and denial of membership. If you're watching this on YouTube, they don't tell you why they kick people out, why people get kicked out. I mean, certainly like murdering your mistress, or at least you're accused of it these days, is a thing. But this is not a training on toxic masculinity, on racism. This mustn't mix topics, so it's part of the whole ecosystem. So, but I could do toxic masculinity. I am the most toxic man, so I am very, very, very. What about other things, though? I mean, anyone have any other ideas about how we can signal that we are neither white supremacists nor open to white supremacists? It's all kind of foolish and difficult because white supremacists are open to attracted to medieval stuff. What are your things? Anyone spoken yet?
I mean, I think anybody can be interested in all different parts of history. So I don't think the medieval history aspect of it is necessarily exclusive. I mean, the origins of the FCA are kind of particularly exclusive, but I know we're trying to change that. I remember when I first started, I mean, I kind of noticed there wasn't very many people of color, but I didn't think about it then. I just thought they weren't interested. Mm-hmm. But they are, and maybe we need to be inviting people that we know so that there's already a connection to a group, to a an area, and to let them know that, yeah, definitely you're welcome. And obviously having recruitments in areas that are more accessible or have more people of color would definitely be helpful. Our local group always recruits at college, always. Obviously that's a diverse place, but they don't get a lot of recruitment there anymore, as far as I remember. but yeah, it's like in terms of, I know you talked about, are the Templars problematic? Well, what if a person of color wants to be a Templar?
I know one, and I mean, I don't know personally for this.
And we shouldn't. That's a part of history. We shouldn't exclude that necessarily, but it should be in context.
Well, certainly.
I guess that's part of it. Is I think we kind of started out problematically, and obviously society is inherently racist. The group, the SCA, started out, I think, in the same way.
And we started out as a bunch of like students who were Tolkien. I mean, we're Tolkien about, but 3 country squires and the Batman take a long walk off the magic ring network to the volcano. And also there's Eds. But it's and then they go back home and they reverse the industrial revolution. Tolkien is inherently calling back this sort of monolithic past, right? And in a lot of ways. But I don't think we've ever read Michael Moorcock's essay on Tolkien. I think it's called this Epic Poo or something. It's definitely worth a read because just as fantasy, and let's not forget that all of this is fantasy, it can be liberating as well as blasphemous. So too, I mean, in the Middle Ages as a whole, the liberating, it's a contested territory. It's still a contested territory. Despite the fact that I just wrote an essay saying that the study of the Middle Ages is worthless insofar as as it's not promoting diversity, right? I was being cynical there, but that's for funding in the modern academy. We really do need to be on that. But of course, we can have a liberatory Middle Ages. We can have a liberatory fantasy literature. We can have N.K. Jemisin, right? We can have all of these, all these things. We can make it what we want it to be. Jen says, as a woman, I confess that when mutual friends or Facebook friends are probably people to keep an eye on them. I don't know when I look for metal friends who is watching for problems. I just see friends being okay with this person, especially for friend requests. Men who I don't know in real life, I have to look for the metal friends who are women to judge them for safeness. Yeah, that makes a big difference, right? Because if you are friends with problematic people, right, you're not necessarily signaling that you are a safe person. And to a certain extent, if you do have a track record of speaking out against racism, sexism, sexual assault, and things like that, then it can help with that. But certainly, if I was somebody who was vetting me, mutual friends. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I hate autocorrect too. Mutual friends, but yeah, it's definitely a thing, right? And I have friends who profess to be, neutral on Facebook, but in a sense, as Dorothy Kim says, right, being neutral is taking a side. It means that I tolerate this perspective, and if the perspective is harmful, that's a freaking problem, isn't it? Which is why we got to be anti-racist. Okay, I want to kind of close this up, though, right? Yeah, almost all media about the Middle Ages is incredibly white. I agree, said Jennifer. Yeah, and being friends, and Jessica said, being friends with problematic people thinking responsibly, police your space if they post hateful stuff in response to your post. You don't let their view go unchallenged. Absolutely. And you have that responsibility, not making your friends do that work. Absolutely. And it's one reason why I keep my Facebook feed basically on my professional activities, including this one, right? And if people post in response to this, then it's my responsibility to clean that up or to challenge them. If, when I put this live on YouTube and people challenge it, yeah, of course I'm going to challenge them on their views they post bullshit, right? All right, we just have a couple minutes left because I think an hour and a half is a good time for a course, and I know that dinner's ready. But
I was just going to say one more thing, but if we're supposed to be anachronistic, why are we sticking to this white European model?
Yeah.
And that's an open-ended question, obviously.
It's not even anachronistic, as we were saying. That it's
Well, they were multicultural, but the idea, the thought of it is it was this very white place, which it wasn't anyway. But we can make it what we want within that history.
And also that whiteness as a concept had to be invented, right? People in 12th century Lincolnshire didn't identify as white because they didn't have that concept. That's not the way it went. But yes, certainly, right? We're 21st century people taking part in 21st century recreational activity. There is absolutely no reason to appeal to some imagined history to argue against diversity. That's false pretense. Absolutely. Cool. Before I wrap things up, anyone have any last points? Anything else they want to say? Anything, speak now or forever hold your COVID. Oh yeah, I'm Seeing White, seen on radio by Seeing White. Yeah, Jen wanted to point out the podcast by Seeing White, yeah.
So earlier you asked a question, is it up to each individual or is it up to the group to be anti-racist and to try and be more open and inclusive? And I think the answer is both. Yeah. I mean, the organization, as you observed earlier, needs to choose to put on demos and events in more diverse spaces, but it's also up to each individual to be that ambassador, to make sure that when we do have someone who expresses interest, to make them feel welcome and show them there's a place at our table.
Yeah. And also too, it's like for looking at some more resources, there's a kind of Facebook / YouTube thing going called Ask the Knights, and the host is a Black man, and he has done 2 episodes with 2 of his friends as a kind of a round table with questions and them on this topic too. And I think that would be if anybody wants to take a better look at it, those 2 episodes would be great to go check out, because for me it's I want to speak up and be an ally, but I also feel that I have to take my step. I have to be in step with people of color and Black people, and it's about just be keeping your ears open as much as possible and learning as much as possible. And that's, to me, that's the only way you can be an effective ally, is to learn and actually have people try. Yeah, that's my story.
Cool. And Jennifer asked, before we conclude, do I have a reading list for further education? Excellent question. First thing I suggest, I'm actually putting one together. I should put a short one together. People asking me to put some stuff together. But the Cy Ormowski bibliography, and I apologize to Julie for mispronouncing her surname, but it's definitely good. See the handout, see the articles on public medievalists. There's excellent series in Race in the Middle Ages on public medievalists that Paul Sturdivant has put together. And a bunch of good stuff also on medievalists.net, which is another cool website run by Peter Koninsky. I write for medievalists.net, and I've done some things there, also considering the implications. Also, I'm very interested. I mean, I got to say, Race in the Middle Ages and in medievalism is very interesting to me, but masculinity and toxic masculinity in medieval reenactment is another thing that's very important to me and very much interests me. And of course, the 2 are related. So I think I'm going to do a consent thing as well. I had scheduled for Penzig. Me and my partner usually do a consent class, where we kind of address that. And once I recover from this and make sure I don't have the COVIDs, we'll take care of that. Okay? So it is 8:33. So we've been going for about an hour and a half. If no one has any further points or anything they want to say, put that out there. Y'all good? Hold your peace. Thank you. Cool. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you so much for being here and doing this and talking and sharing and doing all that, because this is not, this is not my show. This is just, I'm just the facilitator. I really wanted to mainly offer resources in a place for conversation, right? Because I really do believe that the best teaching is facilitating people's own learning, which is why I get consistently crappy in-class teaching reviews. But I guess I don't really like lectures anymore. Anyway, take care. Oh, I don't have COVID. I was just exposed. I'm feeling great. Doggy. Okay, Jennifer is getting here. Wait, hold on. Here, I'm gonna pin your video. Okay. There's a pet there. Okay. I'm gonna stop recording though. Thank y'all.